Good evening. I'm going to call to order this regular meeting for the Ballston Spa Central School District Board of Education for July 2nd, 2025. Can we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome those watching on the live stream, welcome those who are here in attendance. For those of you who are here in attendance, if for any reason we needed to evacuate the library, we have the entrance into the hallway at the front of the library, and behind me in either corner are the doors that lead outside. So this is the first meeting for the 2025-2026 school year. We welcome two new board members, Carrie Chapman and Tim Terbiak, and we are looking forward to supporting our district for this coming school year, and we're ready to get started. So recognition for tonight, we do not have any, right? This is the first time for public comment. Do we have anyone signed up for public comment? We do not. So we're at approval of minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes for the June 25th, 2025 public hearing?
Second.
Any amendments or additions? Not hearing any. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Minutes are approved for the June 25th, 2025 public hearing. I have a motion to approve the minutes for the June 25th, 2025 regular meeting.
So moved. Second.
Any amendments or additions? Not hearing any. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Minutes are approved for the June 25th, 2025 regular meeting. We have our superintendent's report. Dr. Duca.
Thank you. Tonight I'd like to welcome Dana Sisk, who's going to be giving us an MTSS update in addition to her duties as Director of Secondary Special Education. Come on up, Dana. She's also our MTSS coordinator for the district.
Thank you, Dr. Duca. Good evening, everyone. Just make sure. Okay. So thank you for providing me with the opportunity to join you this evening. Over the past, I'd say, year and a half, we've done quite a bit of work on, moving our MTSS structure forward. So I'm grateful to have the opportunity to be here this evening to share with you what we've been working on. So just to start, kind of a brief review of what MTSS is, just as a reminder, and if it's something that's fairly new to anyone. So the multi-tiered system of support is a data-driven decision-making framework that helps us provide supports to students in a variety of ways. It's a holistic framework and really looks at the whole child. So more recently, within the past couple of years, State Ed has developed the MTSSI framework, and they added that I on the end to signify that MTSS is truly an integrated framework. It's holistic, and the purpose of it is to provide structures so that we can support students in any way that they need to be supported. You'll see throughout the presentation that I talk quite a bit about the academic, social, emotional, mental health, and behavioral, but that's really just where we're starting. There are a lot of different areas that we want to look at as we progress. For example, the MTSS structure can be used to support students that have attendance challenges or English language learners. I've participated in quite a few professional development opportunities over the past year on how we can ensure that we are supporting our ENL students most effectively so that they're able to access their education. So we look at a lot of different things with MTSS. New York State has been, for the past 3 or 4 years, they implemented a pilot with 29 schools across the state. And finally, in October 2023, this is kind of how nerdy I am. I was very excited when they actually released the framework document because I had been to a lot of the presentations, been to a lot of the workshops, talked to some of the schools, but they hadn't actually given us the gift of providing us with the framework. So they released that in October of 2023, and one of the things that we've been doing is really, even though they haven't said this is the framework that you need to follow, it's the framework that we've been following. As they developed it, they put it out. We've been working with the different schools that have been part of the pilot program. There were 29 in total. So we've really been focused on aligning with what state ed is doing, even though they haven't necessarily said this is what you have to do at this point. We want to make sure that we're in alignment so that anything that we're doing doesn't have to be changed. So as far as our MTSS process and structure, so going into the summer of 2023, Dr. Duca had asked me to complete an audit of our current MTSS structures within the district. At that time, during the summer, I focused more on meeting with the administrators, principals, district administrators, asking some questions, learning more about how MTSS has been implemented in their buildings. We did some surveys, an MTSS startup assessment, and a readiness survey just to see at the district level where we felt we were at district-wide. From there, I developed 11 different recommendations that I had presented to the board in October 2023. So just to review what those recommendations were as a refresher. So the first recommendation was to revise our board policy 7212 to reflect MTSS as the overarching framework. It previously focused on RTI, which is part of MTSS but isn't the whole of MTSS. Recommendation 2 was to divide the current MTSS handbook into separate MTSS and special education handbooks. So at the time, we had one MTSS handbook. It was 48 pages. 37 of those pages were dedicated to special education, and 11 were dedicated to MTSS and the tiered levels of intervention. So one of the things that we wanted to do right away was separate those, not that they don't connect to each other, but MTSS is not special education. It is to provide those supports to students, and then we determine if students require additional supports to access their education if they need specially designed instruction. But we needed separate handbooks for both because they were commingled, and it caused a lot of confusion for our staff. The third recommendation was to develop transferable processes and procedures between elementary and secondary. Recommendation 4, build procedures to support student academic, behavioral, mental health, and social emotional needs. And we started there because those were some of the interventions that we already had in place. So we're building on what we already have in existence. Recommendation 5 is aligning the handbook with NYSED's MTSSI framework and playbook. Recommendation 6, establish a district-level MTSS implementation team. 7 was develop consistent and transferable referral and intervention processes and procedures. 8, explicitly define tier 1, 2, and 3 interventions to address academic, behavioral, mental health, and social emotional needs of students. Develop a process for progress monitoring the interventions and the effectiveness of our MTSS implementation. Develop professional development opportunities for faculty, staff, and administrators, and then extend the audit to obtain information from additional stakeholders. So I can say that a majority of these, I shouldn't say a majority, probably about half of them we've already started. Some of them will be coming down the pike because we have to complete A, B, and C before we can move on to the others, but I'll kind of give you a snapshot of where we are with each recommendation shortly. So in 2023 is really, 23-24 is when we really got started with MTSS after the audit was completed and I had the opportunity to present to the board. So one of the next things that we did was scheduled reboot presentations at all the buildings. And it essentially was a streamlined version of the presentation that was presented at the board meeting for a couple reasons. One, we wanted staff to know that this is something that we're working on and we're focused on. 2, I wanted them to see the data that we collected, but also to see the recommendations that came out of that audit, because that gave us a little bit of a jumping off point of where do we go next. So after those presentations in January of 2024, we surveyed staff. So this was starting that recommendation 11 where we engaged the other stakeholders. And this was actually really eye-opening for me. It was a survey that was distributed to all of our faculty, related service providers, and we had about 254 responses across all buildings. And the survey comprised mostly Likert scale questions on a scale of 1 to 5, but then there was one question at the bottom: is there anything else that you want to share with us? And out of those 254 responses, there were over 80 staff members that filled in that open-ended question. And sometimes when I have a marketing degree, so when you talk about surveys, you're always cautious with those open-ended questions. But the responses that I got from the staff were very telling. I learned a lot just from what they provided in their feedback. And it ranged from a lot of different things, but some of the biggest points that came out of that I lean on pretty frequently when we're talking about making decisions about MTSS is first, they also supported what the administrator said, that there was a significant variation in how MTSS was being implemented across the buildings in the district and even within some buildings. So that lack of consistency was evident in their answers. They were very clear about the fact that we need a consistent, sustainable MTSS structure. A lot of the feedback that we got was that, it really shouldn't matter who the administrator is that's in charge of MTSS. If we have something that's in place and that's solid and that's sustainable, whoever's coming in should just be able to adapt to what's already there so that it's not constantly changing. That's not good for the teachers, it's not good for the students, and it just makes it a very frustrating process. So they talked about tools and progress monitoring, roles and responsibilities, how do students enter and exit the different tiers. They identified that we needed to identify interventions within each tier of the triangle. So what is a tier 1? What is a tier 2 intervention? What is a tier 3 intervention? They needed some clarity around that. And one of the other ones that I would say was probably the most important for me and something that I try to focus on as we go forward is they want a voice in this process. They want to be part of the development of the structures that we're going to be implementing, because the bottom line is they're the boots on the ground. They're the ones that are implementing this in their classrooms with their students. So their voice is critically important to ensuring that we have a sustainable structure that's effective, and I don't want to say easy to implement because a lot of these things aren't easy to implement, but it shouldn't be so painstaking that I'd rather not do this than provide the student the support that they need. So we really wanted to take a look at all of those things globally. We had a lot of work to do. It's basically what came out of that survey. After we gathered all that data, in the process, we were working on revising Board of Ed Policy 7212. So I thank you to the board for working through that process and adopting that at the end of last school year. So recommendation 1 was a check. We got that policy taken care of. And then we created our district implementation team, which was later renamed the MTSS Steering Committee because nobody liked the district implementation team committee name, which was fine. So we got that started. We had our first 2 meetings in April and May of last year, and then we developed our plan for the 24-25 school year. So what did we do this school year? Because this is kind of really where the rubber hit the road, where we had our district implementation team, our steering committee together. So there was a lot that we really did. We reviewed the science and stages of implementation. So one of the things that I have done quite a bit of research on are the stages of implementation and the fidelity of implementation and the science behind it. So unfortunately for our team, they get to listen to me talk about the fidelity of implementation, but it's critically important to making sure that this works. We started the development of MTSS Common Language. So one of the other things there was a lot of things that we noticed or that came out of just the conversations that we were having, but someone at the elementary level would use one term and it would mean one thing, and then another staff member at the high school would use the same term and it would mean something else, and there wasn't consistency in the language that we were using. So one of the things that we started to do was develop a document where we have the terminology and what it means, And all of those things are going to be built into the handbook so that we are consistently using the same terminology K-12. That's kind of going to be a work in progress because as we go through and we develop the documents, more language is coming up that we're realizing that we need to define so that everybody's on the same page. So we've been working on that. It's kind of fluid. I will also add that we have 16 members on our steering committee. It's comprised of administrators, teachers, related service providers, and almost every building in the district is represented on that team. So we have a lot of different voices coming to the table to work on these things. We reviewed MTSS plans from the 29 pilot schools. Since they had specific folks working with them to develop those plans, we thought they would be good models. So we started reviewing those. We participated in a webinar, Ready, Set, Implement, Unleashing the Power of Readiness for Revolutionary MTSS Implementation. We developed a team structure chart. So we had to, oh no, well, I forgot to give you access to that, I'm sorry. So the team structure chart, which I can share with Dr. Duca to share with you so you have a copy of it, it breaks down what our MTSS team structure looks like. So at the very top is our MTSS steering committee, which is our district level committee. Then underneath that, we have our building implementation teams. So we have our high school implementation team, our middle school implementation team, and then the elementary is going to be designed a little bit different. So each building has their own implementation team because we want to make sure that they can bring what we're doing back to their buildings. But when it comes to designing the processes and procedures at the elementary level, I'm going to bring all 4 buildings together so that we're developing consistent processes across all the buildings. Consistency was a huge component of the conversations that we've been having. So that's one of the things that we really wanted to focus on. And then below that are our student support teams. So those are the teams that would meet to discuss students that need support, when interventions can be in place, how are we going to progress monitor those pieces. So it's a very nice flow chart. I will make sure I share it with you. And then we also looked at and selected a building level self-assessment tool. So just like with the audit, one of the things that we looked at the district and the building level was we need to kind of get a baseline for where we're at. And these self-assessments are recommended that you do them yearly. So I provided the committee with some of the building level self-assessment tools that are most used. And we went through and we analyzed each of them and we picked one that all buildings were going to use. Because we wanted that consistent feedback and we wanted to be able to compare building to building and where we're strong and what areas we need to focus on. We also completed a district capacity assessment. This helps school districts implement effective innovation. So this can be for anything, but in our case, it was MTSS. So this district capacity assessment can be utilized to analyze, if you're implementing a new curriculum or a new program. But for our purposes, it was focused on the MTSS structure. We administered it with the specific innovation in mind. It gave us a structured process so that we can develop our district capacity action plan, which will start in the fall. It gives us information so we can monitor our progress towards our district, regional, and state capacity building goals. And then it supports a common infrastructure for the implementation for desired outcomes for students. So we completed that in May. I provided the committee with the results in June, and that'll be our jumping off point in September where we start developing our district level action plan for what we want to accomplish in 24-25, in addition to some other things I'm going to share with you that we're going to look to accomplish in 24-25. So at the building level, this year we also developed the implementation teams at the building level. So each principal identified the members of their implementation team, and I will also say that all of the individuals that I'll be talking about that are part of these teams, they, in most cases, were recommended I reached out to them, and they are volunteering to participate right now in these different committees, which is really great because we had so many, and I'll show you the numbers in a little bit. But all of the members of the MTSS steering committee are on their building implementation team because we want to make sure that what we're discussing at the district level is coming down to the building level. So we provide that level of consistency so there's not a break between. So that's been working very well. We held an initial meeting with each team for the purpose of the self-assessment and the initial meeting. I met with each elementary building separately. And then we started working on the self-assessment because each building needs to do their own self-assessment to develop their own individual action plan. We have 3 buildings that have completed, it's called the SAMI, the Self-Assessment for MTSS Implementation. We have 3 buildings that have completed it, 3 still in process that will complete at the start of the school year, and then that's gonna help us guide the development of our building action plan. One of the reasons and these actually took us much longer than I expected because the conversation around these self-assessments was incredible. I have pages and pages of notes just of all the different things the members of the implementation teams were talking about, things that used to work, things that they're doing that aren't working. They're coming up with ideas, and this was just part of the self-assessment process so we can carry all these things into our action planning. Also, listening to the folks that took the survey, we needed to do some work on our intervention development. So what we did is we brought 39 staff members together to work on developing intervention banks in their area of expertise. So we started with, we had an academic group, a social, emotional, and mental health group, and a behavioral group. I brought them all together at first, and then we split off into their respective areas. One area, the academic folks, also split into elementary and secondary, and then we brought everybody back together and did an analysis that way. But they all worked probably 2 or 3, in some cases 4 meetings. They met with their respective committees, and they built extremely robust banks of interventions. Again, it was another process that I was in awe of because hearing that we struggle with interventions, we're not sure what a tier 2 is, we're not sure what a tier 3 is, what do we have? We have a lot. It's just a matter of that communication and people knowing what's there and how it applies and working with that within our student support teams. The banks that they developed are actually so robust that I'm hoping that, so some of these will go in the handbook, but I also don't want to put a ton of interventions in there and have folks get overwhelmed either. So my long-term goal would be to develop some type of an interactive intervention bank that folks can access. So that's in the back of my mind on how we could do that, but having access to all those interventions is really, really important. So over the course of the 24-25 school year, as far as our committee participation, we had 63 total faculty members that participated across the 3 committees. We had 16 faculty members that participated on 2 or more committees. 18 administrators participated across the 3 committees. 6 administrators were on 2 or more committees, and then all buildings were represented across all of the committees. So, one of those things focusing on ensuring that everybody has a voice, and there's going to be more as we move forward, more people will be engaged in this process. But for the first year, I think having, 80 people participating in this process voluntarily after school on their own time was pretty awesome, which for me also indicates that there's a lot of people that want to do this work. It makes it much better when you have a team. We had 9 steering committee meetings, 12 building implementation team meetings, and 13 intervention development committee meetings this year. So a lot of work was done in those meetings. In addition to that, I just wanted to mention that we also hosted an MTSS regional roundtable here at district office. So last year I started working with the director of, I always forget her title, she works at Shen, Student Learning and Data Accountability. So we had kind of connected at a workshop a couple of years ago. And last year we hosted a roundtable at Shen, and then this year we hosted the roundtable here. And really it's just a time for different districts to come together to talk about challenges, barriers, what's going well, share documentation. So we're trying to do that twice a year, but things get a little bit crazy. But we did host that regional roundtable here in the fall, which was great for the schools to get together for that. So here's a quick snapshot of our progress toward our recommendations. So recommendation 1, we completed. Recommendation 2, I noted it's in progress because even though we separated the handbooks, we're still developing them. And I just want to make a note on this too. So we're going to have one shell of a handbook. So there's going to be certain components that are going to be the same for elementary, middle, and high school. So the common language, what is MTSS, what's the importance of it, the more general. But then when we start talking about processes and procedures and progress monitoring and the referral process, that's going to be developed at each level because the organizational structure in each building is really going to dictate what some of those conversations look like. What works for a process in an elementary building isn't going to work the same at the high school. So those sections will be different because we want to make sure that they can be implemented in the environment and the structure of the building. It's like trying to, put a round in a square hole. If you have one consistent practice, it doesn't work. We're in progress with that. We haven't started 3 and 4. Those are going to come. The handbook is in progress. We've completed the implementation team. We haven't started 7. And I said we're in progress with 8 because we're still finalizing all those interventions. But I would say we're probably closer to completed. 9 and 10 we haven't started, and then we've extended the audit to obtain information from additional stakeholders. The reason I noted that in progress is because even though we surveyed the faculty, when I presented about a year and a half ago, one of the questions that came up is, are you going to engage parents and students in this process? And I think we need to. Students definitely need to be engaged in this process, especially at the secondary level. It might not be appropriate for all levels, but their voice and the voice of the parents is important too in ensuring that we're supporting their students the best we can. So looking forward to 25-26. So over this summer, these are kind of some of my tasks that I'm going to be focused on, beginning developing the structure of the MTSS handbooks with those common sections I mentioned. The web page we want to start working on. I'll do the analysis for the district capacity assessment and the building level self-assessment, so I have that data ready for the start of the school year. I'm going to develop the action plan templates for the steering committee and building level teams, start aligning those intervention banks, the meeting calendars, and then I consistently participate in various professional development opportunities because there's always new things coming out. So that'll happen over the summer too. Next year for the steering committee, we'll utilize the results of the DCA to develop our action plan at the district level. We do need to start talking about professional development and what that is going to look like, but that's going to be a longer term conversation, mostly because we want to make sure we have things in place when we're providing the professional development. The last thing I want to do is do a workshop and then have our folks have a lot of questions that we can't answer yet. So we definitely want to have some structures and foundations in place before we jump into that, but we need to start talking about it, continue the MTSS handbook, review the action plans and process and procedures, develop the building level to make sure we're in alignment, and then start looking at data tracking tools for progress monitoring. At the building level, we need to finish the SAMI in 3 of the buildings, develop the action plan, begin developing the building level processes and procedures. That'll be in the handbook. And at that point, as I mentioned, elementary buildings will combine into one team to ensure consistency across all the buildings. So those will be our main focuses for next year. And one of the things that's been a little bit challenging is everybody wants to move really fast. And I do too, because I want to get our structures in place. I want to make sure that we're supporting students the best we can. But we also want to make sure that we're very intentional and thoughtful about the process that we're following, how we're implementing, and the structures that we put in place. Because in the end, we want them to be sustainable. We want them to be consistent, long-term. They should be effective and efficient, but not so hard to implement that we don't want to. We need to, I saw something on Facebook the other day, and I'm in one of those MTSS groups, and it just said, MTSS does not need to be this hard. And I agree, but we're not there yet. So that's kind of one of the processes one of the things as we go through this is, how do we make this effective, efficient, streamlined, sustainable, but just not that hard, to make sure that we're giving our kids everything that they need. I probably went way over my time. Sorry, I talk a lot.
So that was wonderful. You need to take as much time as you need and come see us often. But let's open it up. Do we have questions or comments from our board members?
I just have a question about the steering committee. You had mentioned that almost every building is represented, or like which buildings are out, or how did that look
So
like?
initially, when we were developing the district level committee, as part of the survey that I sent out to the faculty in that January, I asked for volunteers. And that's where I started, because if someone was volunteering, then I knew that they were going to be committed to the work. So it ended up starting that those folks were where we started, coming into this school, and most, I think there were 2 buildings that weren't represented at that point in time, but there were some changes happening with administration and different things like that. So at the start of this year, we actually had, I think, 3 or 4 members added to the steering committee, and it's been more a matter of who wants to participate at the district level. As we proceed through, there's going to be components of this at the district level where we're going to have to bring in like little subcommittees, and we're going to need all the buildings represented, because I want to make sure that everybody's voice is there, and so that's kind of how that played out.
Okay. Other questions, comments?
I have a bunch more.
Please,
I hope I can
Gonna
answer
nerd out
them.
right now.
continue.
So first of all, thank you, because I appreciate how comprehensive, how thorough, how careful you're being. Like, this is really hard work, right? Like, you're looking to like steer the battleship, right? And that just takes a while. So really appreciate that. Couple questions. If you're thinking about, obviously you've got work in progress, but have you thought about sort of the reporting out mechanisms besides the professional development opportunities and the handbooks? Like, what would be other ways that you might want to, get the word out about the intervention bank, or, something like that?
Yeah, so I actually started this year developing a shell for a monthly MTSS newsletter. Just hadn't gotten far enough to start, but it is something that I've started developing that I think would be, because it is important for everybody to know what's happening. The last time that they did hear kind of from the MTSS group was when we did those presentations, and then from the survey, and then obviously just the involvement of other folks, so they know that we're doing things. But that is something that I do have on my list, is to do a newsletter that would be distributed district-wide, so that everybody's kind of at least knowing that we're doing things here behind the scenes right now, even though you might not see it.
All right, last one.
No, keep going.
No, it would be helpful because, I've seen, obviously, we've seen the what tier 1, 2, and 3 look like, sort of more abstract ways. Are you able to just give a quick example of like what would be an intervention for tier 1 versus tier 2 versus tier 3, just like to have that sort of more on the ground?
Sure. So, and I will clarify too, because this is one of the conversations that we had this year, is tier 1 is really good teaching practices, right? There can be interventions that teachers do in their classroom that are more tier 1, but that would be more general for the whole population of students in their class. So moving into tier 2 and tier 3, this could be a student that requires additional support with, I'll say math equations. Probably a terrible choice because it's not my area of expertise. But at a tier 2, it's a smaller group of students. They say typically 80% of students meet what they need to meet in tier 1, but that's going to vary based on the group of students and those different types of things. But tier 2 is a next level of intervention where the student, even by providing that, the repetition in a whole group, still needs just that little bit more because they're not really getting the concept, or they're really struggling with how all these functions work together. So that could look like a pullout in the classroom, where the teacher is taking a group of students to the side, and they're working on developing that particular skill for them. Tier 2, historically, folks have thought Tier 2 has to be out of the classroom. It doesn't. Tier 2 interventions can be provided by the teacher in the classroom. It takes planning for that to happen, but it can, in just doing some of that small group and center work, it can be pull out too. It's just a smaller number of students. And then when you get to Tier 3, these are the areas that we're looking at, those really intensive reading interventions, math interventions, but not yet special education, where, at our elementary schools, we have the AIS structures. So those are much smaller groups of students, typically 3 to 5, that require a more intensive level of support to work on meeting those benchmarks and developing those skills. But that's where the progress monitoring, I'm kind of going a little further, but that's where the progress monitoring comes in to be really important, because we need to be able to gauge what that student's baseline is and what their skill development looks like, because students shouldn't be in Tier 3 forever. They should be in Tier 3 working on developing that skill, and then have that exit criteria where they're maybe shifting back down to Tier 2. The other piece too is, if you have a student that is receiving Tier 3 interventions, they're also getting that good teaching in the classroom, and they also should still be getting Tier 2 level interventions. And that's one of the things that in a lot of the research that I've done has been consistent, is they stress very strongly, if they're in Tier 3, that doesn't mean they're not getting anything else. It's that consistency of the Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 and it is fluid, because as they're developing a skill and they're building on that skill, they shouldn't need that Tier 3 intervention forever, which is why that progress monitoring is so important. Did I answer your question?
Any other questions or comments? I have a few.
Okay. Hopefully I have answers.
The banks of interventions that you mentioned, just so I'm clear, everyone's clear, those are sort of the specific how-to guides for whatever the particular student need is, at whatever the particular tier is.
Correct.
Here is what you should be doing with that student.
I don't necessarily want to say it's what they should be doing. There are different options of what they can do, because every student might need something a little different.
Sure.
One intervention that works for one student might not work for another.
Based upon the receptiveness and the aptitude of the student.
Right. And so what we've done is we have the interventions broken down into Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. So these are the practices that are good teaching. These are the things that we would expect to be happening in the classroom. But it's also resources that people can use. Because one of the other things that we did find in the survey is there were a lot of folks that felt that Tier 1 needed to be strengthened a little bit. So that's going to be our first piece. And then there's the Tier 2 and Tier 3. And we actually also have them separated. What interventions are appropriate K-12, what ones are most appropriate for elementary school, and what is most appropriate for secondary, because there are going to be variations. Once I clean up the documents, I'm happy to share them with you. They all look different because all the different committees were working on them. But once I align them, I'm happy to share them with you so that you can look at them. And in the academic realm, they also broke it down into math and ELA, and then general academic supports.
Sure.
So there's really a lot there.
So I'd like to talk out and muse a little bit, just sort of like the access and the vehicle that's used to share these, because it seems like these are items that, besides being incredibly important, also probably have a very wide audience. The different schools, et cetera, et cetera. Have you seen a model for a repository that you think is been successful and you think is good?
I have. So we will start with some of the interventions being in the handbook, because that's where we want to start. But we can't put all of these interventions in the handbook, and there will be things, I'm sure, that will be added over time. So what I have seen when I've done some research on different websites at different school districts is they have interactive I don't know that, they didn't call them intervention banks, and on one website, on one school district site, it was actually very specific to diagnosis. It said if a student has anxiety, and you click on it, and it said, these are tier 1, these are tier 2, these are tier 3. But what I would like, and I've actually already started a conversation with Jason Lamora about, is there a way that we would be able to create something that could be accessed on the dashboard, like an interactive intervention, whatever we would want to call it, so that if somebody, or you have a student support team that's like, we've tried these interventions and they're just not working, what other options do we have? They can easily interactively click through that
Sure.
web-based map.
And,
Yes.
and that's, exactly what I wanted to hear. We're here in the 21st century.
Yes.
We've got all this whiz-bang technology out there.
Yep.
Clearly, someone being able to pull this up quickly, find exactly what they need, have it be consistent, from building to building and or even grade level to grade level, helps the program gain fans, get people's buy-in, et cetera, et cetera.
Agreed.
So yes, I strongly urge that we partner with our technology arm, see what we can do that's, web-based, that everyone can have access to. I can almost see a portal where, step 1 is, who's your student? What are you looking for? What are their needs? Blah, blah, blah. Here's, the suggested list of interventions. And when you pull those up, potentially there is a, maybe a video version, a bullet point version, a detail version, and as you said, what is related to this? So if they could pull that up and say, here's the tier 3 intervention, and oh, by the way, this tier 3 intervention dovetails with this tier 2 intervention and this regular resource that's in the classroom, everything is there for the person. And again, they can just pull it up and spend less time, figuring out what do I do, and more of here's where I go, it's presented to me, and we can start with the student.
Yep.
That's
Intuitive.
That's the idea, right?
Yeah.
Okay, love it.
You added a couple little pieces in there, so I'll have to talk to Jason about how we can do that as far as, but I did write it down as far as, how would clicking on something to identify the need. I think there are some areas that might be a little bit tricky, depending on how specific the need of the student is, but we definitely can use that process so that I think linking them all together is really great too with the tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3.
Right, and so again, this is me speaking. You want to talk to the people with the letters, after their names, and the people who have the decades of experience working in that and all this. But
Yep.
I just want to stress the concept of, the ease of accessibility
Sure.
and the uniform standards in that presentation, which I think would just go, a long way towards buy-in and use and success.
Thank you. I agree.
Okay. And I thought we had somewhere a MTSS document that just talks about the tiers, and definitions and what happens in there and all that. Maybe if we can try and find that.
Yeah,
and
it's
just,
in one of the bulletins, but I can pull it. and send it.
yeah, if we could just revisit that for everyone's general knowledge, I think that would be helpful. And then we have, I believe it's twice a year, presentations which share our results from our beginning of the year assessments, mid-year assessments, end of the year assessments, and I would assume that it takes a little while to put together the end of the year information. I think we generally usually have that in like October or September or so, but we see the results from the prior year, and you've got your red, yellows, and greens, and we get to see the shifts to the positive results. And it's really instructive in terms of like, where we see potential, leaders, laggers, et cetera, all that good stuff. So that's kind of a partnership with what we will also see later in the year in terms of assessment. So yes, come back anytime, please.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes the superintendent's report.
Wonderful. Do we have committee reports tonight? I do not think we do. Correspondence to the district.
We had 5 total, 3 calls regarding student matters and 2 emails regarding student matters.
Wonderful. And correspondence to the board since the last meeting. We had 1 email regarding student matter. And announcements. Do we have announcements tonight? It's summer, right? Okay. Old business. Do we have old business from the district? Old business from the board? Okay, then on to new business. I have a motion to approve resolution number 52, policy statement, free and reduced price meals.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Resolution number 52 is approved. I have a motion to approve resolution number 53, Board of Education Policy Manual File 5685, maximum temperature for school buildings and indoor facilities draft.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
I just had a question. How does the temperature get measured exactly? Is it measured by building average, or is like zones or individual classrooms?
Yeah, so it needs to be taken in the middle of the classroom, or the facility, really, if if it's a classroom or a gymnasium.
Okay, very well, thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Resolution number 53 passes. I have a motion to approve resolution number 54, Board of Education Policy Manual File 7316, student use of personal technology draft.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
2 questions. First, just my understanding, this puts us in compliance with New York State law and policy, correct?
Yes.
Yes. And then secondly, I noticed the part about, certain exceptions to be determined, approved by building administration. Is there like a universal criteria by which each building administration follows in terms of approval, or does that vary by building?
It's going to vary by building. We didn't want to put procedures within policy because those need to be flexible. So those will be internal procedures at each building level. So elementary and secondary is kind of how we split it.
Yes, all right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And there was some guidance in the New York State regulation regarding medical exemptions or medical needs, but it didn't really say a whole lot. So yes, the district, again, as Dr. Duca said, each building will be developing their own detail
Yes,
on the exemption process.
thank you.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Resolution number 54 passes. I have a motion to approve resolution number 55, agreement, professional services.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Resolution number 55 passes. I have a motion to approve resolution number 56, agreement, professional services.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Resolution number 56 passes. I have a motion to approve resolution number 57, agreement, professional services.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Resolution number 57 passes. I have a motion to approve resolution number 58, agreement, professional services.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Resolution number 58 passes. May I have a motion to approve resolution number 59, agreement, professional services?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Resolution number 59 passes. I have a motion to approve resolution number 60, agreement, professional services.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Resolution number 60 passes. May I have a motion to approve Resolution number 61, Agreement, Professional Services?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Resolution number 61 passes. May I have a motion to approve Resolution number 62, Award of Bid, Heater and Boiler Preventative Services?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Resolution number 62 passes. I have a motion to approve Resolution number 63, Award of Bid, Playground Sunscreens.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Resolution number 63 passes. I have a motion to approve Resolution number 64, Obsolete Equipment.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Resolution number 64 passes. I have a motion to approve Resolution number 65, Placement of Students with Disabilities.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Resolution number 65 passes. Resolutions number 66 through 82 are recognized as a consent agenda for the purpose of Board of Education action. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, resolutions number 66 through 82?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The consent agenda, resolutions number 66 through 82 passes. And I just want to take a moment and recognize that we have Ms. Eggleston, special education teacher, who is just appointed here in the audience. Welcome. We're thrilled to have you join us. Any other new business? We have any representation from our associations? There is no PTA, PTSA announcements. We're now at the time for public comment. Do not have anyone signed up for public comment. So this is the only meeting for the month of July. Our next meeting will be the first Wednesday in August. And then we get on our regular schedule of first and third Wednesdays. And I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.